Hey guys, it's Mr. V over here doing a book review today for Death on the Nile by Agatha Christie. Before I get into my book review, I want you to know that I try to do a spoiler-free book review, so let's get into the book review for Death on the Nile. The main premise for this book is all these characters from different backgrounds, they go on a cruise, and while they're on this cruise, a murder happens. There's also a very famous detective who's on the cruise. Now he must solve who killed that person. If you guys are considering this book, I would say don't even read the back because the back tells you who gets killed. And I would say that while the murder happens fairly early on, it's a lot more fun going in not even knowing who gets killed. Let me get into my book review for Death on the Nile. So this book was an interesting read because there were a lot of characters from the beginning. And something that was interesting is that she had like an odd way of introducing the characters. Because section 1 had like a 1 to 3 page of like introducing the character stories where she gives like these small backgrounds on like what happens to these characters because they all have scandalous backgrounds. And she gives it like a 1 to 3 page introduction on each character in the very beginning. And it's not bad, it was just a little odd because that's not something you see an author normally do. Because normally they get introduced like as they introduce themselves while they're, for example, while they're on the cruise ship. But she just like gives them all in the beginning and then they all go on. So it was just a little weird. And because of that, it takes a little time for the story to get going. You know, it's not bad, but it just takes a little time for the story to get going because the character introductions are 36 pages. And you can't skip them because they are very important. But, you know, it is 36 pages. And as I said, there's minor plots for each character. And because of that, I wasn't fully engaged in every character's subplot. But it's still, you know, don't skip that part. But I would say that after the story starts, like where they are on the cruise ship, it definitely gets a lot better. Even though there's a little time before the murder happens, it's not like they're on the cruise ship and the murder happens. It takes a little bit of time. It still isn't bad because it's a very short book. The audio version is only 8 hours, so it doesn't take long before the murder actually happens. And at that point, the pacing becomes a lot better because you get used to the characters fairly quickly, not only because of the introductions, but on the ship, you learn a lot more about the characters, and I think she did a great job in building these characters very fast. You have to realize, again, it's not a long book, so it's never super in-depth about the characters, but she did a great job of like building them up fast, and I think it's because of the great dialogue that she does in the book. It's like you feel you are really watching the characters speak, and I think that helps a lot to build them up very fast. And I also think the book was just a lot more fun when they were solving the case. Because while the murder is the main case, there's actually a few crimes that happen on the ship. And at that point, the story just becomes so much faster and the mystery just makes it so much more fun. As I said, there's a few different cases. There's the murder, but there's also some theft on there as well, and it's a big theft. There's also these subplots in between where there's like love and then there's also jealousy and there's a few like anger ones. So there's a few subplots. And a lot happens like on this boat, and at that point again it just makes it so much more fun because the tensions are so much higher at that point with all these other mysteries that are going on. And at that point I'd say you just become so much more engaged in the story. It was, I think, a lot better than the very like beginning of the book because I would say she does a great job in how the mystery just comes together very well while they are on this cruise. Now, it is a bit far-reaching at times. You know, it is a bit far-reaching about how the detective solves the cases because, as I said, he solves more than one mystery. So how he solves it is a little crazy at times, but it is not impossible. It's not so nonsensical that it's like comes out of nowhere and you're like, how did he ever solve that type of thing? Again, a little far-reaching at times, but it's not so obvious either that you just know who the murderer is. So again, that makes it a lot of fun because it does come together well. So, you know, that part again was a lot of fun, but you have to remember that it is fiction, and when you go into that, you have to remember, okay, yeah, it is fictional. So that's, you know, you have to remember that part. Now, some of the things that I did not like about this book, one of the main things, or the main thing I didn't like, was that there were just a lot of characters. I told you that in the very beginning, but there is a lot of characters, and this is not a long book. I said the audiobook is only 8 hours, yet she put a lot of characters in there. And I think, of course, she wanted to do that to make like so many characters, to make the mystery greater about who could be doing what things. And like so many people could be the murderer but I still felt there were too many characters. I think she could have trimmed it down a bit, as there were so many minor characters, and I didn't think she needed that many. Because at times it can be a little confusing on like there's so many minor ones. You're like, wait, who is this one again? Who did they like? Who was? And it was just, again, I think it could have been trimmed down a bit. The other thing I didn't like about the book was that the main detective sometimes would give these quotes in French. I don't know why they didn't translate it to English. Maybe it was just my copy of the book, but even the audio version just said some of these quotes in French when the detective was speaking. I don't know why. Most of the detectives spoke in English. Like most of the time he spoke in English. So I don't know why he would sometimes say something and it'd be in French. That part was a little annoying to me because then I didn't know what he said. But, other than that, it was just like, hey, most of the main things were in English, so that was fine. But overall, I'd say Death on the Nile, it was definitely a decent book. It's a shorter book. It's a very easy read. As I said, it's only about 8 hours. So if you're curious about mystery, this could probably be a good one to read. It's a very easy one. And while it is a decent book, I would say you don't have to rush out to get it because there's nothing that's that amazing about it to me. But let me give it my official rating. So I would rate these books on a scale of 0 to 10, with a 0 being awful, a 5 is average, and a 10 is phenomenal. If it's anywhere near 10, put it on your reading list because I'm a very tough critic, and a 5 is average. So for Death on the Nile, I'm going to rate this book a 5.5, which remember, 5 is average, so it's just above average. And the reason I rated it a 5.5 and not higher is because while I had fun with the book, it was never anything that was like super amazing to me about the book, but it was still definitely above average, and it was still one that, it was still a fun read. But if you guys have any questions or comments, please post it in the comment section below because I always love hearing your opinions. If you guys enjoyed the book review today, hit the subscribe button as I always upload multiple different types of book reviews. But thank you for watching my book review today. This is Mr. V. Go enjoy reading.